Thank you all for coming. Thank you to everybody who's joining us by Zoom. We are very grateful to have Ryan Vizzions with us here today. Ryan just completed 3 weeks with hundreds of Native American horse riders on the annual Little Bighorn Ride, which culminated last week at the Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument in Montana on the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Little Bighorn, which was one of the most famous military engagements in American history that resulted in the deaths of George Armstrong and 287 of the Army's 7th Cavalry Regiment. Ryan is an independent photojournalist, and his work has taken him far and wide. His work has been included in the Photos of the Year by People magazine, ABC News, and The Guardian. And his photographs have been featured in Newsweek, Mother Jones, The Huffington Post, NPR, The Guardian, The Art Newspaper, The New York Times, and most recently, the Minnesota Star-Tribune, among many other publications. Several of Ryan's photographs are included in the current exhibition on the walls here. And in just 2 days, our nation will commemorate and celebrate the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Much of Ryan's photography addresses the ongoing struggle for equality, inclusion, and justice. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us here tonight.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Monroe. You already know Ryan Vizzions.
That's me.
We're just going to have a kind of a loose discussion. Ryan's going to show a few slides, and then we'll open the floor up and include everybody in the discussion.
I'm not much of a public speaker, so I'm going to go ahead and apologize in advance for my nerves. It's an honor to be here. Marks 10 years since the Standing Rock movement. It's a very full circle moment for me. As Sid said, I just came off documenting about 450 miles of horse rides through South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, to Little Bighorn. But this moment's very important to me because 8 years ago, when I found out that the Monroes wanted to contact me, I was trying to figure out how to be a photojournalist and figure out my path. And I was homeless, and I was sleeping on a friend's couch, and my friend is here tonight. So for the first time in 10 years, many facets of my life have come together, and it's concluding tonight. So I want to say thank you, Fred, for being such a long and gracious friend, and thank you for the Monroes for believing in me and my work, and just everything you do for the photojournalism community at large.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's easy to represent lightning in a bottle. So let's start with September 2016. You left Atlanta and you headed for North Dakota to the Standing Rock No Dapple movement. Can you give us a quick explanation? There may be some people that either have forgotten what that was about or didn't pick it up as the media was reticent to cover it for a long time. Just give us a little background on why you went and what it was.
Sure. For anybody who may not know, the No Dapple movement was an indigenous-led movement that took place in North Dakota, right on the edge of the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, just south of Bismarck. It was an oil pipeline that was originally supposed to be built right outside Bismarck, North Dakota, which is a 95% white community that rejected the idea of it. So the pipeline decided that they were going to move it right outside the Standing Rock Reservation. When tribes and indigenous communities also voiced their concern about it, the oil company and the local news and local politicians and everybody didn't care what they had to say. And so what led was 10 months of frontline resistance to protect the water and indigenous sovereignty. And I first found out about it thanks to Amy Goodman in Democracy Now!, who was one of the first news organizations that were on the ground. I saw a Facebook feed just like everybody else that now is more prevalent, but 10 years ago, social media wasn't being used in the same way. And what I saw was very reminiscent of the civil rights era. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, lived down the street from Martin Luther King's church, and there was an incident in September where security for the pipeline used dogs against the indigenous community. And that rang very similar to what was happening in the 60s during the civil rights era. So I halfway jokingly on Facebook made a comment that said I'd like to go out there and stand in solidarity. And some guy I'd never met, Neil, if you see this, still never met him, he said, I'll buy you a ticket. And then I was kind of in that position where I was like, oh, well, now I got to man
Put up or shut up.
So, yeah. So I took his offer and I flew out there, and I was there for about a week. And what I saw, as a white guy from the South, I'd never really experienced what was taking place out there, but you could tell something important was happening. And so I came back home, put all my stuff in storage, quit my job. My job didn't even know I went to North Dakota the first time until I called out. I was a busboy. And then I went back. I was only intending to stay for about a month, and one thing led to another. I was there for 6 months, and it was an honor to make so many friends out there and stand up for what was right.
You know, so you brought a camera, but you didn't necessarily intend on documenting. For many months, as we said, there was no coverage. You really had to find it. I think Facebook Live was integral to people learning about it. How did your photographs break through to the broader public? Some of your images have been seen by millions, and how tell us how you learned that images amplify and inspire movements and grow movements.
So the way at that point in 2016, it goes back farther than that. When I was 26, my father had taken his own life, and I discovered photography as a way to kind of deal with depression. Thanks to Fred and other friends, that when we were younger and kind of young and ambitious in activism, and I started documenting what was happening in Atlanta a lot with Black Lives Matter. This photograph from, I believe it was 2015, that was after the death of Philando Castile. So I just carried the camera with me everywhere. I was learning. And so I brought the camera to Standing Rock with me. There was an action one day where a young Native woman had her the police had put their knee on her neck. And I had gotten a photograph of it. And my friend Myron Dewey, who has now since passed away, he said, you need to put that on social media, and you should create a page. And so we created this page together. It was called Standing Rock Rising, but Myron was a drone pilot, and he's Paiute, and he was doing his own thing, and he never updated it. And so I put it on there, and it got a couple, few likes. And then when I took the photo that's known as Defend the Sacred now, I randomly posted it on there. I didn't think anything about it. And the next day at dinner, somebody said, oh, Aaron Brockovich shared your photo. And then Tom Morello shared your photo. And who's that guy from Lord of the Rings, the elf guy? What's his name? What's that? Orlando Bloom. And when we were at camp, there was no, you were lucky if you got internet reception. So you'd post and then you'd not have internet for 2 days or something like that. And when I came back, that Facebook page I started had gained 100,000 followers from that photograph. It had gone on Reddit. Somebody had posted it on Reddit, and it had gone around. And I was only planning on being there for a month because I had no resources. I didn't have any plans. And then when that happened, I said, shit, I can't go home now. People were tuning into that page to kind of find out what was happening. And at the time, I was helping do media check-ins on the Hill And that was kind of the realization that maybe I shouldn't be checking in other media, but be doing it myself. And so through the support of my auntie Joy Braun, who's also passed away, and some other friends there that really trusted me to help kind of document what was taking place, I started to use that platform to share what was taking place. And so that's how my photos helped raise awareness of what was happening. But another thing that happened at Standing Rock that I weren't aware of is that the camps at Standing Rock 2016. What also started on April 1st, 16 was Facebook Live. That was the first day that it became a full public thing. And so the Standing Rock was this kind of reckoning to the sense that local news was trying to paint these camps as violent protesters and just out of control people. Look live and see indigenous community praying while being shot with rubber bullets and tear gas, and that really hasn't been available yet. And so
That's so interesting because the traditional check on power, which is what the press was, is, fingers crossed, had to be checked by independent journalism, right?
And yeah, for sure. I mean, there was local news stations there. I mean, you're talking about North Dakota that is just, you know, lots of oil company out there, you know, lots of oil business out there. I recently went to the Greenpeace trial where they got sued for $600 million, and over half the people that were on the jury had family or friends that worked in the oil industry. So this idea of a non-biased community up there, there wasn't a chance to get a fair trial, and the local news was definitely feeding to the fear of the community that these were all violent people. And then that's how social media really started to change that narrative, because people were hearing this and tuning in and seeing something live, which was completely different than what they were being told. And so social media really played the catalyst for that movement. And then as somebody who was working the media tent, I saw when everybody was coming in, because I had to tell them what they could and couldn't photograph, sacred fire, children. Mainstream media really didn't tap into Standing Rock until they couldn't ignore it anymore. And when it was, where it was obvious that you were just ignoring. And to their credit, they did clear what was happening.
So for the past 5 years, you've been traveling this giant country, state by seem to always be in these hot points of where does process work? I'm working on a project, and then, I mean, I know how you ended up in Minneapolis. We'll talk about that, but tell us that process of like, which stories are you compelled to cover and which are, you know, you'll have to reluctantly miss?
First off, I want to say that almost 6 years ago, I began making this book about the country, and the reason that affected me and seeing every man, I got that I deserve to be here. What can I do that, oh, this is a dumb idea, perfect. So I left with like a 30-year-old what I was doing, and somehow 6 years later, I'm still out there working on it. As far as how I'm able to choose stories or being on the road alone, I do have my, it's actually, and when it's boring, it's really boring. Oh yeah, no problem. I'm just going to drive 10 hours because what else are we going to do? But there's luck involved to place at the right time. You can be there in time to cover happen. To make that trip, but luckily I'm bored a whole lot on the road, so when something happens,
I mean, are
I'm
you
going.
drawn to almost all of it? And discipline yourself about practical possible and
I mean, you know, really about civil and human rights, and so on is who we are as a country, and it's focused. There's a lot of contemporary and stuff, but
that's okay. We were talking,
nervousness.
no, I want the discussion to
Sure.
be like this. You know, it's fine. We were talking, and I'll Minnesota not be prompted you to tell me much more about what you learned from Standing Rock to. So you happened to be in Minnesota shooting Minnesota as a state when the operation intense, and you arrived after Renee Good's death. Yes.
I was in when Renee was killed.
Okay.
I
And
had-
then you headed to Minneapolis?
Yeah. Every year, Dakota horse riders down to Wounded Knee to honor those that were massacred at Wounded Knee. Fortunate to tag along and photograph, finish the Bigfoot ride, and I just. Okay, Minnesota, December sounds like, or January. Go and use this heater. I went to Minnesota in January, and the idea was to photograph interior with over there. That Renee had been killed in Minneapolis, and I need and the photojournalist in me, and so I drove all the way from the North Shore, made it to where Renee was murdered, just in time for the vigil that was taking place that night. And that night there was probably between 8,000 and 10,000 people at this vigil. Just there's a photograph back in the corner of it. Actually, I got it up here.
Yeah.
This was her vigil the night that she was murdered. And I use that word very bluntly. She was murdered
Of
by
course.
masked federal agents of our U.S. government. And when I settled in, as a photojournalist, I was fortunate to be there at that time before everybody came in, because you could tell what was happening in that community was very similar to what was happening at Standing Rock, where it was a community trying to protect themselves and protect each other and hold together in a time of crisis. And so as photojournalists and other news sources started to come in, on top of the Star Tribune and all the amazing journalists that are in Minneapolis itself, I saw a need in the community. There were so many people that were just trying to do what they could, whether it was walking your neighbor's children to school because they were afraid to leave their house, or delivering groceries to families that were afraid to leave. I saw a place that I could help, and that was the Caretake Renee's Vigil. And so I camped out, and I had that heater, and there was nobody that was really more compatible to the situation of camping outside a vigil in 10 degrees or -20 than I was. And so I ended up caretaking her vigil for 70 days, which was 2.5 months, through -31, and somebody tried to set the vigil on fire, and we were lucky to put that out. And then I felt this obligation, that a connection to the vigil, that I couldn't just leave when it was time for me to leave. So as somebody who loves to put burdens on myself, like this project I'm working on, I said, what else can I do? And you know, between Alex and Renee, their families are devastated, right? Like, to the point that they can't come and pay their own respects to their families, you know, they're lost. And so I decided that I was going to archive her entire vigil for her family, and spent about I was able to raise enough funds to build a makeshift studio in Minneapolis, and I spent about 2 months photographing every single item that was left for Renee, and I have an archive for her family, so they could look at it in their own comfort of their own home, without cameras around, and they could decide if there's anything that they might want to keep, and just do the right thing and honor people who stood up to protect their neighbors and their community. So,
And you learn the importance of that. We were talking earlier about the potency of something static in chaos, and you learn that from the sacred fire at Standing Rock.
yeah, that's correct. We were talking about this earlier before all this started, but a lot of the reason that I think I was drawn to Renee's vigil is, you know, in a place of chaos and where there's hope and fear and resistance and all these things, I learned from the Standing Rock, No Dapple movement at Standing Rock, which had a sacred fire that was put down, never went out, people tended it all the time, and you learn how important to create a space where people can grieve and can heal and can rejuvenate themselves and can be around community. And so for me, the lessons that I learned at No Dapple was to not only honor Renee, but honor the community and keep that vigil going. And if the center is healthy, then there's a chance for everything to stay healthy. And so that was a lot of my motivation behind caretaking the vigil. When it would snow, we'd cover it in tarps. There's a couple times where I had to dig it out because I slacked on that. But it was a lot about finding these connections between different communities and different movements, and a lot of it is giving a place where people can gather and heal, and that was a big factor behind why I did that.
I love to hear about, I'm not going to be able to quote you exactly, but I love to hear about you noticing your through lines from No Dapple, Black Lives Matter, Minnesota. And something that you said was that you had noticed that predominantly people come to a situation like this in one of two ways. Will you talk about that?
So when I first started photographing, I didn't know what I was doing, but then No Dapple and the Standing Rock movement was, it was a movement really built on hope. It was the first time that a lot of tribes had come together in history. And what you saw was people that really saw not just what was taking place there, but the long-term impacts of what these movements can have. And you know, when you talk about photos, or what I try to strive with my photos, like when it comes down to it, when I try to take a photo of somebody, I'm trying to honor them. I want to take a photo that somebody in 30 years is like, yeah, you know, check out your grandpa, you know, like photos that people are proud of and they can hang in their house and things like that. But when it comes into movements, there's generally a few places that people enter into the movement. One is from a place of anger, and the other is from a place of hope. And you can see it with how some people will come in like a firecracker, willing to get arrested and do all that stuff and really hold that line when it's really needed. And then you'll see people who are willing but those are the folks that usually come in from a point of anger. And rightfully so, angry about these situations, and they're willing to take the risk. And then when people that are coming in from a place of hope and can see not only at the end of this movement, but what this can mean 10 years, 20 years, a few generations down the road. They are willing to step back a little bit. They understand that you don't have to risk it all. As we were talking about with Minneapolis, Minneapolis was forged through the George Floyd movement and the communities and the mutual aid that was built out of that. So when Trump and ICE decided that they were going to come into Minneapolis, that was the worst damn idea.
It's so great. They were ready.
They were ready, and there was multiple mutual aid groups that were already on the ground that had already been working for 5 years. And then courage is contagious, right? And then what you saw was people figuring out how they can help in what capacity they are willing to help in. So as we were talking about earlier, is that, you know, there's people out there that were tracking these ICE guys going around the city, but somebody had to stay back and watch their kids and babysit. And so not everybody has to do the frontline work. Somebody has to cook the soup. Somebody has to watch the children, you know, and it's really about understanding how far you're willing to go and what your capacity is. And, but they're all important. You know, it's all intercircular. Those people can't go out and watch ICE if somebody can't watch their children. And so it's all connected. And Minneapolis was hands down, I mean, they beat ICE. And it was through the community and the leadership, you know, on the ground, grassroots leadership that did all that. And they really kind of set the game plan on how to deal with our fascists that are happening in the country.
Yeah, there were civil rights leaders at Standing Rock that could help, you know, with some kind of background structure on what works and what really, really doesn't. You know, that the feds are dying for you to pick up a rock.
Oh, yeah.
You know, metaphorically. And so...
Oh, they put the rock there for you.
Yeah, they put the rock. And so I think that's interesting, too, that these, you know, these practices are handed up through history. And to pick Minneapolis, that was an uncharacteristically ignorant thing to do. I'm being facetious for this administration. But what an interesting city to choose, because it was a lighthouse for the rest of the country. You know, I don't know about you guys, but I thought we might have to do that. You know, we need to pay attention. We might have to do this. And they're showing us how to do this.
To any of my Minneapolis friends that may watch this, Prince always knew that the revolution starts in Minneapolis. and they will all tell you that the home of Prince, that's where the revolution starts. And he was right.
Yeah.
And that community, I've been fortunate to travel and visit a lot of communities and experience a lot of things. And what I saw in Minneapolis was on a level that I had never witnessed before. It was just anybody trying to figure out how they could help their neighbor at any capacity. Everybody, entire blocks of people that were working in unison to protect their neighbors. And it really did lay out a blueprint of how to deal with these situations. And Minneapolis gave me hope for the entire country, because we found their weakness, and their weakness is each other. We have to work together. We have to look past our small issues and recognize that even our small issues, we can deal with that later.
Right.
We got a big issue we got to deal with right now.
Right.
And you saw people put aside their small differences to stand together. And
Right.
It just, that's why I stood out there for 70 days at that visual, because that community was so strong and so powerful. And I can't give them enough credit.
Your energy during that time was amazing, and you were not getting much sleep.
Oh, I was chilling in my van a whole lot.
Okay, so Sid's giving us a sign.
Oh, he's telling me to move to this photograph of all these great guys. This was a series that I did while I was there outside the Whipple building, and the series is very timely known as Faces of Fascism. And what you saw and what you can see in these photographs is a ragtag group of people who are just kind of sloppily thrown together and given immunity to terrorize their community. And this is them.
So the whole point of Metro Surge was just to sort of shock the system, like, no holes barred violence, and maybe that would be the quickest way to subdue resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what did you notice, and how quickly do you think they understood this isn't working?
They, in my opinion, the DOJ and Homeland Security and Kristi Noem, who is a horrible person and a dog killer, and her face is melting, they thought they were just going to roll in there and just do their thing. They had this unlimited budget and immunity, and what we saw was from Metro Blitz, which was in Chicago, is that internal documents came out saying to instigate these issues to cause, what's his name, Stephen Miller, wanted this PR thing about trying to justify what they were doing. So not any different than the Standing Rock movement and COINTELPRO from the 60s and all this stuff, is that we're dealing with a government who's instigating situations and creating chaos to try to justify dropping a gauntlet and a hammer on American citizens and people who are here just trying to live normal lives.
Yeah, trying to get something to pop off, pick up a rock.
Yeah.
That's what John Lewis said. They want you to pick up a rock.
I mean, we've seen it where, over the last few years, I don't know if it's, the myth or whatever, but you've seen these photographs of pallets of bricks being put around. But, I mean, COINTELPRO in the 60s never went away. And that's still where we exist today. We're a corporation and we just pay taxes and die.
So when did it occur to you that this wasn't working and in fact the resistance was succeeding?
Oh man, any given day you'd be in Minneapolis, I'd be out there at the vigil, and an ice truck would drive down the road and there'd be fucking 15 cars behind them, man, honking their horn. Like, those guys couldn't move 2 feet in Minneapolis without the community on their butts. And that was what it took. And they realized that they weren't going to be able to steamroll the community, because everywhere they went, there was 50 people standing there with whistles blowing it in their face, letting the community know that they were there. And it was just direct action from everyday people. They try to paint this out, as protesters, as paid protest. I'm still waiting for my George Soros check from 2016. Believe it or not, living in a van and being an independent photographer isn't a well-paying job. So anytime if anybody knows how to get a hold of George, let them know that we're waiting on that money. But, all these people that are doing these incredibly heroic acts, teachers, work at your local supermarket, just everyday people trying to figure out how they can help. And when you can get thousands upon thousands of people to connect and work in that way, the forces that control us all don't have a chance.
Yeah, you're really responding counterintuitively. When you see this ultra-militarized presence in, your town, on your street, your natural response is to run, hide. Mm-hmm. And so that must have been an extraordinary thing to see. Grandmothers, children, parents, everyone do the opposite of what is natural. It's like running into the burning building, mm-hmm. rather than running out. And I think that has a huge psychological effect on the aggressors.
Oh yeah, I mean, nobody was scared of them, I mean, the only thing they had is when they had numbers and guns, they'd
well, that's something.
Yeah, it is something, but
yeah.
as somebody who's photographed them without their masks on, you realize these guys aren't even intimidated. It's the mask that makes them scary. When they take off the mask, you're like, oh, you're kind of a dork, dude, you know, like, and the interesting thing about it is this is all rooted from white supremacy, for sure, but there was an extremely large amount of Latino ICE agents. And I'm not here to speak on either side of that, but what we're dealing with is much larger than what we kind of perceive in our brain. There's something that we have to do to deprogram these people from thinking, you know, it's not a race war, it's a class war. And those at the top keep those at the bottom fighting each other, so nobody remembers to eat Jeff Bezos, you know? So that's my opinion on that one.
Do you have another slide?
Oh, that's a good question. What do I? Oh,
That's
well, I
okay.
messed that up. So I tried to put a slide together. So these are a few images of when I was caretaking Renee's vigil. I didn't really go anywhere. I knew that everybody else was covering everything, and so I stayed there. And it was a really interesting, I learned a lot from sitting in the same parking spot for 2 months and saw a lot of the world come by. And it was a really cathartic experience to watch the progression and the different phases. As you can see, like, that's during a blizzard, and that's during a snow melt, and they're pretty much taken from the same spot because that's where I lived.
Yeah, well, and you sort of were you were at the touchstone of the movement, so people just came and went around you.
Yeah, it was a real learning experience for me to be there and really see in the heart of a movement how that works. I'll tell you, I'm not going to get into it, but there was a lot of people that I thought would come by who didn't come by. We'll leave it at that. And then people who I didn't think would come by who did come by. And so you kind of, being a fly on the wall and watching what happens was a real awesome experience. And I'm just honored that I was able to do my part. You know, as somebody, as an independent photojournalist, I get to operate in a little bit different way than photojournalists who work for publications. And I think, you know, we're humans too, right? So like these stories matter to us, and our community also matters to us. And so when you find an ability to, or a place to where you could help, where your abilities align with being able to help for something bigger, like doing the archive or something like that, it was just an honor to be able to play my small part in resisting fascism.
Well, I think we should open up the conversation to everyone. But I do want to say, after 32 years of representing photojournalists, I have no idea why you do this. I'm so grateful that all of you, and you all have a familial connection. Yeah, we feel that you're part of the gallery's family, but you're part of a much broader tradition. People who are compelled to document history, which is most often the oppressors and the oppressed. The best photographs are those that we were never meant to see, and they have tremendous power to change. And I thank you, and I love you for doing this.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you. I can't speak for everybody, obviously, but I think photojournalists and just people in general understand that the world we're living in now and where we always have, it's really important for future generations to know what took place. And the only way that we make a better society is to not forget the past. And so I think deep down inside every photojournalist, we understand that responsibility to document and make sure that our children and our grandchildren understand what we lived through and what we're going through. And hopefully they can make the decisions to better society, because right now we're pedaling backwards. And so we need to do everything we can, which sometimes requires putting down the camera and just being a person, but to make sure.
It most often requires you're uncomfortable in one way or the other. You're either extremely hot or freezing cold, you're tired, you're underpaid, you're in danger, you're often unwelcome, especially by people with the most power.
Oh, yeah.
And it really is a mission, and you serve your country, and you serve history.
Oh, we love it. I know every photojournalist loves it. You know,
Every minute.
I mean, I just showered yesterday for like the first time in 2 weeks because I was on this horse ride, and last time I showered was in a high school in Montana on the Northern Cheyenne Res. But there's nothing I'd rather do, you know, than just be able to, you know, what was real interesting is this 150th Little Bighorn ride. These horse riders, some of them rode from Nebraska to be there, and not a single news publication. Everybody covered the charge of the hill, but nobody thought to cover the 300-mile horse journey. And so it was a real honor for me to be there with my friends and photograph, not for the news, but like I said, so these people could be like, look at what your grandpa did. I got lots of cool photos of a lot of people riding those horses. And for me, it was being able to gift them those photos and just be with those are my friends, man. I love the Horse Nation. So anytime they're like, hey, you want to come? I'm like, yes, please.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, let's get going.
Hi, my name is Roberto. I love your photos. You had that one photo of the portraits of the Gestapo agents in helmets and masks. Mm-hmm. Did you use a 1,000 millimeter telephoto lens, or were you right in front of their faces?
I was right in front of their faces with a 100 to 400. I was using pretty much what's considered a birding lens. It's, you know, one of these lenses that long, and you just stand there and just point it right at them. Sometimes they would be they didn't want to look at you, but eventually they look at you and you just take that photograph, you know. But yeah, it was a big lens standing really close, and that, you know, part of the point was to kind of put that intimidation back on them that we're watching them, and I was real happy with that series. Oh.
I have the microphone. Hi. We have your photo of John Lewis and the band.
Oh, yeah.
And I talked to you before. It just gives me chills. But I was really fascinated by what you said about the photos being posted on Facebook. I don't do Reddit. It seems like the work you're doing is not being put in the mainstream, but are there people that you're connected with, like on Substack, or anyone who will get more of your work seen out there? Because young people, they're not reading, you know, mainstream journalism anyway, and this is so important. And I just was curious about where else who's reaching out to you or who you're reaching out to.
So my approach with photojournalism, as opposed to standard, I guess, legacy media, is I'm a big person of tangible work. It's really important for me to create photographs that people can take home and they can share with their families and can be passed down, right? And these conversations will happen at the dinner table because that photo will be there. As far as how people can see my work more, I'm really bad at social. I use like Facebook and Instagram, and that's the only place. I don't use TikTok or anything. But my focus has never really been social media to that extent. It's been creating. That's why I want to make this book. This will be my third book that I've made.
I mean, you do have an enormous following.
Well, thank you. But as far as that, I'm not good at it. You know, when I first started, you know, as I was kind of saying, you know, when I went to Standing Rock, I was a busboy at a restaurant. And so, like, all this whole situation is new. When I was trying to figure out, I don't know anybody in the industry. I've never played, you know, the who you know game or that kind of stuff, except for these amazing folks. But a lot of it was trying to figure out how to do it on my own, and so I just kind of make it up as I go, I guess.
Can I just ask one other thing?
Sure.
Because I would willingly repost, I have well over 1,000 friends on Facebook. I would repost your photos and all that if it's allowed. And
Sure.
I don't know what your page is or anything, but it's, to me, it's vital
Uh,
to get your work out there.
I do have a page on Facebook, which was the one that was started at Standing Rock. It was originally called Standing Rock Rising, and after the movement ended, I felt like maybe I shouldn't be using that name anymore, especially as who I am. So I changed it to No Spiritual Surrender. But even that I haven't updated in like a year. I'm real bad. But part of that goal was also, you know, if you want to see what I'm doing, buy the book when it comes out. You'll see all those stories, and I'm just I'm making it up as I go. And any guidance from somebody who knows how to do this better than me would be more than welcome.
Staying with Standing Rock for a second, because you've talked about that was your first major gig, being an outsider, but you've referenced at least one auntie. Mm-hmm. And that's a community that when you traveled there, you really did need to make relationships to build trust. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate at No Dapple to have two aunties. One was Paula Antoine, which you know, and the other one was Joy Braun from Cheyenne River. Paula Antoine's from Rosebud. I was kind of like one of the first people to almost die at Standing Rock, and that's how they were like, okay, you're cool, we get it, you know. I was working on Media Hill, and I had a radio because I was working the media tent, and somebody said, everybody with a radio, come meet at this hill at so-and-so time, and I'm like, oh, I'll go down there, and it turned out to be a bunch of folks that were going on a night mission to kind of lock down to the pipeline. And I was trying to get out of it. I said, just want everybody to know I got a camera. And they're like, oh, no, that's great. You should come with us. I'm like, fuck, man. So, and then somebody brings a chanupa. And when I spoke to chanupa, I said, I can't back out of this. So I ended up going on that night run. I fell in a river, got hypothermia. My body core dropped down to 92 degrees. I was in like intense, the best you could do in a makeshift camp medical tent. But afterwards, that's when I first met Joy Braun, and she told me, she said, you were willing to die, for this movement. You'll always be my family. And so she was my auntie, but she looked out for me and protected me at times that I needed it. And I think that's kind of what earned the trust, at least with Joy, because she was kind of one of the coordinators of it all. And I knew as long as you had the aunties on your side, you're all right, man. Just follow the rules of the aunties, and then you'll be okay. But that was kind of how I was. I feel that that was kind of my end, and it wasn't intentionally. I slipped on a log and fell in a river in like 20-degree weather 4 miles from camp, and it was a whole thing.
Hi. I first of all want to thank the owners of this gallery because I'm here about once a week.
Oh.
And I don't know if they think I'm a pest or what. Okay, well, for me, this gallery is a sanctuary because, I get kind of inundated by all the reading and the news that I watch. And I have to decompress. And I've seen a number of your photographs, so I want to congratulate you on your amazing work.
Thank you.
But the thing that really intrigues me is the way people came together in Minneapolis. And if you look at the No Kings demonstrations, there were joyful events, nonviolent events. And I was fascinated because the government was trying to incite violence and threatening to arrest people, at all of these things. And I was just amazed how people came together and just instinctively knew to peacefully protest. And, you know, I really want to, I mean, I'm old enough so that when I come into this gallery and I see pictures of John Lewis, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, you know, JFK, I lived through all that. I remember all of those assassinations when I was a child. And so for me, I think we really have to give a little credit to Martin Luther King, who was the pioneer in the story that I always think of is he was peacefully marching with hundreds of people. I think it was in Alabama, and it was less than a year before he died, and somebody threw a brick at him, and he was knocked down. And all the people around him were ready to incite violence because they were so outraged. And he was hardly conscious, and he just got back up and he just said no. And then everybody just continued with their peaceful demonstrations. So to me, this is, when we look at what happened in Minneapolis and at the No Kings rallies and other events, I'm just fascinated by that impulse that people are not going to fall into that trap. They're just going to resist, but peacefully. And, you know, so thanks again for your wonderful work.
Oh, thank you. Great words, by the way, and I agree with you. Both Fred and I, folks from Atlanta, Georgia, John Lewis was my congressman, so as you can imagine, that was a big inspiration. And if you've never been to Minneapolis, Minneapolis is a city like, they understand that joy is resistance as well. They have, every May, they have May Day, a big pagan holiday where people make all kinds of, you know, sculptures and riding on triple stacked bikes and all this stuff. But this year was a very special one. Southside Minneapolis is a very special place, and if you ever get a chance, go there. If you do go there, you'll understand how they were able to resist peacefully, and joy as a form of resistance in Minneapolis not only fought hard, but also celebrated with the understanding that the people in power don't like celebration from the people that are supposed to be held down. And as I said before, Minneapolis is just, it's a whole nother world. It's one of those only cities I'd be like, yeah, I could live here, you know? And I never thought that, because as a Southern boy, I never thought Minneapolis was one of those cool cities. I was like, damn, this is cool.
I had a quick question. Alex Pretti was targeted for documenting, you know, what he was seeing. Were you ever in danger? Did you experience any hostility from the ICE people or anybody?
Funny story about that. Not so much. Over the years, I've learned to kind of keep my distance from those guys. A lot of photojournalists will get right up in the mix with these guys. I shoot with my birding lens sometimes because another thing is you don't want to have the same photos as every other photographer, right? So you try to look for a different way. What I was saying about a funny situation is I don't wear body armor very often, just because it's not really my style. But there's a few times in the years that I've said, man, I got to wear my, you know, my armor with the press on it. And unlike most photojournalists, mine is bright red, because I have this idea that if I want to be seen as press, I'm going to make it very clear that you could see me. So mine's like fire truck red. The guy on the left here, who is obviously posing for the camera with the smoke grenade and the flag that he had just stolen from an American citizen protester who was out there, I'm pretty sure he thought I was like a Republican or a Trump supporter because of that red bulletproof vest, because he was like giving me the show in that photograph, as you can see, like it was a Vogue model walk. So no, back in the day, I used to deal with a lot of tear gas and that kind of stuff. But now I kind of stay back and kind of get in where I fit in. I'm in my mid-40s, which, you know, is still kind of young, but not young enough to be taking rubber bullets like, you know, 10 years ago. So I hang back in the cut. Let the young guys do that.
Well, we have time for a last question.
She had a question up front.
Okay.
Oh,
Because I'm working the law and I'm
Yeah.
concerned about how the law is being used to discourage more and more everyday protest and to interpret things like documenting as interference with the law and obstructing justice and all these terms that they have. And I was just wondering, you've said that you haven't so far changed how you approach, but have you, is that a discussion among photojournalists about how to figure out how to do the work, because we all know the images are so stunning and so important for activism and for people's understanding of what's going on. But is there something else that needs to be done when they're ramping up the risk?
that's a good question. I think everybody understands the inherited risks with covering these stories. I also think most people who are covering these stories don't care about the risks. We have a responsibility to show up for the people and show what's happening. We can do the best that we can to protect ourselves, but I think most people are working for the knowledge and the understanding of the common good, and we see it now. Press freedom is at risk higher than it's ever been before, but I could hopefully speak for my colleagues that that's not going to slow anybody down from doing the right thing. We'll be around a lot longer than the fascists will. So.
I mean, that's the perfect way to end. Please stay. Thank you so much for coming. If you have time to look at the show, we'd love to have you.
Last time I cried, so I appreciate everybody for not crying. I didn't cry, Bob. I didn't cry. Thank you all for coming, too. Thank you so much.